Are you looking to take your personal finances to the next level? You're in the right place. Welcome to the Monday Money Tip Podcast, presented by I Was Broke, Now I'm Not, with your host, Joseph Sangle.
Well, welcome to the Monday Money Tip Podcast, presented by I Was Broke, Now I'm Not. My name is Joseph Sangle, and as always, we're bringing you right now relevant information on Monday. And this is episode number 164. We are here in the month of August, working through the fifth season in South Carolina known as Inferno. It's between summer number 1 and summer number 2. And in this episode, I'm so excited what we're going to be talking about. It's actually a continuation of last week's episode where we invited author and writer and inspirer Sarah Piercy to join us as she was talking about the spending challenge that's going to be launching right away here in the next week or so. And Whitney Purcell, a member of the I Was Broke Now I'm Not team, joined us as well. And today, the focus is going to be on Whitney walking through the 30-day spending challenge. And she's been going through this herself. So we're so excited about it. Before we get to that, though, we want to tell you about our featured resource. And so let's go hear about that.
Do you wish you had more savings or a little bit less debt? Do you ever feel stuck or stressed by your money? Do you know where your money goes every month? What if I told you you could get on the road to financial health in less than 30 days? Whatever your spending struggle, if you want to move the needle the right way, right away, take the 30-day spending challenge. I'm Sarah, and I am a spender, and a series of spending fasts have not just changed my habits, they've changed me. Through a series of spending fasts, I have found healthy financial footing, but also peace, more gratitude, more generosity. Unchecked spending can point to an internal tension, making money way more stressful than it needs to be. And that's why I created the 30-day spending challenge. It is a jumpstart in the right direction for your finances. The 30-day spending challenge will kickstart your financial goals and lead to personal growth. Reboot your spending habits in less than 30 days. I'll give you the practical tools to create your own fast based on your spending struggles and coach you through right to the end. Sign up for the 30-day spending challenge today to jumpstart your next financial goal and reboot your spending habits holding you back.
All right. Well, I really hope you'll be able to join us for that 30-day spending challenge. And so today, we're going to talk to Whitney about this 30-day spending challenge you've been on. So Whitney, kind of introduce yourself. Tell about the scenario that you've been in. Kind of tell about, your life, what your life looks like. How you decided to do this, and then where are you at in your challenge?
Okay. So I have been a member of the I Was Broke Now I'm Not team for a little over a year now, and walked in with a background in accounting, had been staying at home with my girls for a couple of years. And shortly after pandemic, everything shuts down. Around that time, I kind of thought I really need to stop spending as much. And then thank you, pandemic. Nothing's open. It's a lot easier not to spend when you're not going anywhere, when you're not seeing anyone, when you're not in stores. And around that same time, I got to meet Sarah. She was coming on our podcast to share a little bit about her spending fast that was for a year. And just hearing her, it was really inspiring. Joe says this all the time, and Sarah has said too, that they are spenders, and I would definitely classify myself as that. So I'm coming into this season, and mid-pandemic, my husband took a new job that required us to move halfway across the country. So we had lots of upheaval. We were selling a house when we didn't know what was going on, trying to look for houses when there's like nothing on the market, moving into a rental home that we never had seen before for 3 months, and then ultimately buying a fixer-upper because that was about all we could find, and spending just over a year fixing that up with 2 little kids. So we've got a daughter, Ava, who will be 7 here in a couple weeks, and then another daughter, Emma, who just turned 4.
So I can feel the stress. The stress is radiating out of the podcast right now. If you're watching it on YouTube, you can kind of see this is therapy for you, Whitney, as you're sharing. So quick summary: married, 2 young daughters, both of them kind of in elementary school. Yes, or preschool?
Preschool, but they both schooled at home this year too.
There we go. So moving to homeschool, moving halfway across the country, renting a house, selling a house, maybe trying to buy a house, maybe doing a fixer-upper, husband's taking on a new job. And just to kind of summarize all of that, I remember I went through some leadership training back when I was in corporate America. And then they found out I was unmanageable. So I mercifully left corporate America. But they went through this leadership training, and there was this resource called a stress map. And it's basically a way of doing self-analysis of how much stress you had. And one of the things that they said in their research is that the most stressful events, when they listed them in order, major relationship change, like divorce, like off the charts, right behind it, moving. Right behind that is moving. So you added that, the kids are changing schools and friend groups, and it's very challenging, making new friends, leaving your friends group. And so you're in the midst of that. And you're still working for I Was Broke, Now I'm Not, now remotely, not coming to the office. So pick up the story some more there.
Yeah, so there was just lots of change. And we had come into the season and were convicted about, wanting to move the needle, working with Joe, just looking at kind of some stuff where when we were a single family income, how we had to make some sacrifices. And wanting to use this move as an opportunity to kind of climb the ladder that we were learning about. And so we were able to make some really good progress in that season through some of the increased salary and doing some of those things. And then, we had made good money on our first house and we went. So there were pros and cons. There were some good things and bad things. And we saw this giant shift in our finances. And one of the things we had done was kind of set aside some of the profit from our first house. We put some toward deposit and then some towards renovating. We had sold some of our furniture. So there was this onset of needed spending. And while some of it was really good, we were increasing the value of our home, doing an investment. It also was something where it just became so habitual. And with all of those stresses and lockdowns and, things opening and closing, I definitely feel like I was a retail therapy person during that. So you're talking about all the stress. And Marshall is my guilty pleasure. So it got to the point where my oldest was like, I don't want to go to that place again. I hate that place. And it was kind of like, we have no friend groups because we've just moved here and everything's shut down and we can't meet people, but we can go and, stroll the aisles of Marshalls and it's great deals. And we need it for the house, but it just kind of got to this point where it was like, hey, do we really need to be doing this? And where am I finding my comfort in this stage versus what do I need to start doing? And that was kind of around the time that Sarah was talking about creating the challenge. And it was one of those God moments, I feel like, where it's like, even if it doesn't speak to anyone else on our listener list, which I know it will, I told Sarah before, I'm like, thank you, because I needed this just to kind of look at the comfort that I was seeking from my purchases during that season.
So let's ask the basic questions. When did you start your challenge and how long of a timeline did you commit to?
So I started my challenge the 1st of July and I decided to do 60 days because I felt like we'd come off a year of working on the house and I wanted to do something a little more challenging. So I'm a little over halfway through right now.
So you've been working on this resource with Sarah. And so Sarah, I wanted to ask a question to you. You went on 2 365-day spending fast. So when you hear that Whitney chose only 60 days, do you immediately say lightweight? Or is 60 days enough to experience some massive life change?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I always say the first 3 months are the hardest. So by the time that she's done, she'll have done pretty much the hardest part. And there'll be some really interesting things that she'll be able to learn and probably already is learning about herself just at the 30-day point. So I'm so excited for you, Whitney.
It's funny that you say that though, because the other day I was having a conversation with my husband and I'm like, I feel like I need to extend this because we're already seeing some change. And it was kind of that little moment of conviction, like, hey, what does it look like to push this out longer? So we're having that conversation this week. So we'll see.
So let me open it up to both of you. When I hear that description of Sarah's saying, hey, the first 90 days, that's where you're forming new habits. They say it takes 90 days to form a new habit. When I hear all this, I'm reminded of this moment where I was teaching my personal finance class, and the church was offering a bunch of new classes for the new season of ministry. And they had all the leaders of the different ministries show up. And I mean, we had all of them going on. I mean, there was Christ-centered weight loss, Christ-centered fitness, Christ-centered addiction recovery, Christ-centered, there all these different things, And I realized at the end of this that there was a common word that really described what all these were, which was all these are going to help you instill personal discipline. So this spending challenge, is that what it really is instilling a new habit and personal discipline? I leave it open for both of you.
Well, I'll jump in first. So I would say yes, like the first thing that I hope happens for you, and the first thing that happened for me, was rebooting my habits. So I had bad habits that I just wanted to change. And then what started to happen was I actually started rerouting my heart in more significant places, and who Christ says that I am. But then at the end of the spending fast, what's important is actually setting the disciplines moving forward. So it's like you're churning up all the soil, and then at the end, you've got all this soft soil. What are you going to do with it? And that's where those new disciplines come in after you've, uprooted those bad habits.
Ooh.
Yeah, I definitely agree with what Sarah is saying. Like, I feel like right now it's stopping some of those impulse things. And I think I had myself convinced, because we were staying within a budget, because we were getting things for our home that we had planned for, and because we were making financial progress, that my spending was okay. And then kind of just checking and saying, hey, even though it's okay in this season, would I be okay if I continued on with my current habits? Would that lead to good things, or would it lead to destruction? And it's been interesting because I feel like when I started off the challenge, it was kind of seeing my habits kind of going in this direction where I felt like this is not going to end well. But during it, it's been interesting to see the heart change part of it come out too. I was sharing with Joe and Sarah earlier that we're reading, like I'm in a Bible study where we're reading through the Bible, and we're reading Isaiah and Amos, and it was talking about how these prophets are coming and saying, you're not taking care of the people. There's plenty to go around, but you are hoarding it, and you are being greedy, and your greed is causing this massive scale of wealth versus people who have nothing. And it's just been interesting to see how I feel like some of the things where I'm like, well, it's okay because we tithe and we do this and we do that. But kind of taking that lens off of, well, what could we do in addition to that if I curbed my own spending? And then getting to have those conversations with my girls has been really fulfilling too.
That's awesome. So when you first started out, Whitney, did you have any specific financial reasons for doing this? Financial goals? Like, were you trying to save up for something, so you were going to fast from spending on something else? Or were there any financial related goals?
I mean, like I kind of shared, we've actually been able to accomplish a lot of our financial goals in the last year and set new ones recently. We have some long-term goals, obviously, for helping our girls pay for college. They're still little, but as we see those college prices increase, we kind of thought about, like, what does it look like if we curb our spending so we can put more money there? One that's kind of a fun one is we've decided that eventually we want to have a pool in our house, at our house, because we love to be able to invite people to our home and have them feel welcome and entertained. So that's something that we're going to save up for. And that was one of those where I'm like, well, how would this move the needle towards that as being a someday dream to like an actual reality at some point? So it was kind of twofold, I guess, there, looking at those long-term goals.
Sarah, is that triggered any questions for you to ask Whitney? Or does it remind you? Do you have any PTSD, from post-traumatic stress disorder, from starting a spending challenge?
Do I?
Yeah. Should a person who says, it seems traumatic to me. I want to point out something on YouTube and those listening to podcasts. Sarah has done this lots, 2 different ones a year. Whitney has done this. I have not. So I am viewing it because I'm going to participate in this challenge. My family is going to participate. And I am scared. I am nervous. I don't want to see what my heart condition is like in this area. I mean, there's a part of me that knows that there's issues. So, are you experiencing any sort of trauma reminders of when you were on your spinning fast, or?
So I'm in the process of writing a book about my 365-day fast, and I decided for as long as I'm writing the book, I am on a spending fast. So I do not know when it will end. So I will add to this that I'm on a spending fast with you together. As I created the challenge, I'm on my own fast. And as I'm writing, I'm on my own fast. Because it is a challenge, but you're not alone in it. And I hope in some small way, me doing this with you is you can do this. And one of the things that one of the goals we're working towards is we want to take a 10th anniversary trip. And we just realized, that's only a couple years away. And we have friends whose 10th anniversary snuck up on them. And we're like, we want to do something to mark that milestone. So that's something that we are saving for. So it can actually be a very fun and motivating experience when you are working towards a really tangible, exciting financial goal. In addition to the stuff that it digs up in your heart, the results can be very positive. So I'm going to say I don't have any PTSD
That's good.
Yeah, about fasting from spending.
So for everybody's going to be part of the challenge. You just got a glimpse of Sarah, the coach, the guide through this process. So that's very good. That helped me. I'm a little calmer now. So Whitney, have you learned anything yet? We're recording this. It's releasing somewhere in the late part of August. We're recording this at the start of August. You're a little over halfway through your 60-day spending challenge. Have you learned anything so far? Kind of share what you've been learning.
Yeah, I think a lot of things on different levels. One, just how much, I know too, like in our society, even with our phones, like we have these natural reactions where it's you go to like grab something, and as the primary household supplier, it's really easy to have just these habits where you don't even realize that you go and do them. So one of the things was like making sure that I cut some of those habits that led to the spending out as well, and kind of looking at how that has affected my day-to-day, how I've just had more time because I'm not spending time doing those things. And then just kind of thinking about what also I can gain. We talked a little bit about that conviction there, about giving more. And it just so happened in the midst of all of this, as we're like planning this and we're writing an episode of the podcast talking about back to school supplies, Ava brings this little envelope home from school, or from church actually, raising money for kids in Africa for school supplies. And it was just this really neat conversation that we got to have with her, talking to her about how, we have plenty. And sometimes we get so caught up in looking at what other kids have or what comes in the little pamphlet or brochure from Target that we don't have that exact item, but looking at things that we can actually do for others who don't have enough school supplies. And that concept seems so foreign to these little kids who have everything they need. So we kind of joined in with her, and we actually did a little challenge with her and said, okay, whatever chores you do over the next 2 weeks, we will pay you for them. And then whatever you decide to give of that money, we will match towards the school supplies. And she just got so excited about it and was just so excited. And then of course the 4-year-old, because the 7-year-old was excited, she's going, I want to give too. So they're going and like getting money out of their piggy banks. And I'm like, it's so neat to see their little sweet hearts being formed by decisions that we were making. In a positive way, where it's the change that I was experiencing, saying no to some of those little things that really weren't hurting us financially, but were hurting us emotionally and spiritually in terms of keeping us back from being as generous as we could be. And then seeing those conversations come about so organically with the kids and getting to breathe those lessons that I'm learning into them at this point and kind of partnering with them and thinking about how we can be more generous as a family.
That's awesome. And I think, we talk a lot around here at I Was Broke Now I'm Not about practical stuff about money, how to do something, how to budget, how to calculate your debt freedom date, how to pay off debt. But what you're talking about here is heart stuff, true feelings, things that are not able to be measured, but we know if something's off kilter. And so let's speak to something that the whole world is facing right now. And that is a whole lot of extra anxiety. I feel like, COVID-19 happened. And, I remember as a kid growing up and Mike Tyson was just at the top of his game. And anybody who climbed in the ring with him, it wasn't the first punch. He would hit him with a punch and that would daze him. But it was his left hook, the second punch, that would just knock him out. And they came out with a Nintendo game called Mike Tyson's Punch-Out. And anybody who played that game, and I'm talking to a bunch of people my age or so, you would finally get to Mike Tyson and his first punch would knock you completely out of the ring and it was not recoverable. And it was just unbelievable. And I feel like the whole world has taken a one punch. And anything that can happen has the potential to be a two punch and knock people out of the game for a year, a decade, or longer. So have you found that some anxiety has went away as you've proceeded through the challenge? Because financial anxiety is a real thing, amplified by the fact that people can't work the way they used to, can't travel the way they used to, whatever it might be. They're fearful of paying their rent, their mortgage, especially on the outset. And maybe I'll open this both you and Sarah. Have you seen this affect anxiety in any tangible way?
I'll kind of speak to that a little bit. I think we were blessed in the midst of this when Mark took a job, it was actually a promotion. And so as a lot of people were adjusting to lower incomes or no income, our needle went the other direction. But at the same time, our anxiety went through the roof because we're talking about, like we said, all those different life changes, kids at home, trying to do online school and everything else. And for us, it wasn't necessarily like the financial anxiety of like, where are we going to pay the next bill? But it did become this hoarder mentality a little bit. It was really hard not to let what everybody else was experiencing kind of cause us to then like bring stuff into the storeholds. And there's a good and right thing in terms of making sure that you prepare in the middle of the famine. But at the same time, I think it went from preparing in the middle of the famine to like this anxiety level where it became greed centered of like, what can I get that will help me feel more calm? How much money should we increase this to? And for me, I think it was just kind of identifying like, hey, there's a difference between being planned and prepared and having retirement stocked in an emergency fund and doing that, and then refusing to be generous or ignoring my own greed in there. So I think this has helped me kind of relax a little bit and say, hey, we have been able to move the needle. We're still going to move the needle, but by saying no to myself and some of my own personal desires that I don't really need to, I can also be generous as well and not be anxious about giving freely.
Sarah, anything you would add from your own journey?
Yes. So my anxiousness doesn't look like the clinical anxiety that we talk about. I have loved ones that share their clinical anxiety. But for me, I have seen my anxiety newly in the last couple of years. It just looks very different. My head gets cloudy and my thoughts are spinning and I get very overwhelmed. And I feel like I'm going underwater and grasping for something to keep me up. And when I started when COVID happened, I was actually in a similar situation to Whitney. We moved houses, but we didn't move cities. We were renovating a house. I was 7 months pregnant and had 2 little kids. So we had 3 under 5 for a while. Anyways, so like our environment, our physical environment was chaotic all the time. And it created so much anxiety in me. And I was spending on Amazon like crazy, to the point where there was like a desire path on our front lawn of like where the courier was walking on our grass because of how often I was ordering Amazon during COVID. So in comes my next spending fast because I was feeling anxious and spending money in order to try to control my environment and feel more comfortable and feel security because life felt so chaotic again. And it was very freeing to put down my phone, to close the Amazon app, to stop scrolling through online stores, because that was really the only way I was shopping during COVID, as we know. But it was very freeing and calming to not be trying to solve my discomfort with stuff. And so, yes, I would say that there was comfort that came from that, but it was because I was reminding myself of where my true comfort comes from. And, you know, our comfort comes from God, but how do we make that real in our heart? So that was really powerful this time around.
I think that's fantastic. And so as we wrap this up, we got a couple more minutes here. I'm just thinking through everything that I just heard from both of you, and I'm excited for what those who are going to join us in this journey, this 30-day spending challenge, and what they're going to experience. I guess I would kind of spend these final minutes talking about success. So for me, part of the success is when you actually look back and say, I behaved differently, same scenario, same thing where I would have done this before, I've actually changed and the behavior was different. So Whitney, how has it felt when you've looked at a moment when you would have spent and you've said, I didn't do that this time? Have you had those moments? What does that feel like?
I've had several. I shared with Sarah, like even down to something as silly as we were at the lake with family, and I had like this float that I wanted and realized that we didn't have it anymore. I guess we threw it away with the move because it was broken. And my normal impulse would be like, oh, it's just an inexpensive float, I'll go grab that. And instead it was like, oh, nope, I'm on my fast and I'm not going to do that. And it just it was something small, but it was a little reminder of like, this is the start of that. It was like, I think the very first weekend of having to say no to something right away. And then since then, I've seen like multiple different things come up, but it's also sparked these really great conversations with others from a standpoint of, hey, I'm new to this, but I'm also seeing that, like my husband came home the other day. We are the people that charge things to the credit card, but we pay it off every month. Like we put all of our planned expenses on there. And he was like, this is the lowest our credit card has been since like before we had children. And he's like, this is so awesome. He's like, we have extra money. So we're actually getting ready to do a big dump into the girls' college fund because we didn't spend as much just on some of the stuff that we normally would.
That's so good.
It's been so exciting. And then like I was talking about those great conversations that have come about with our girls. Ava's birthday is actually coming up in a week. So we decided to do one thing she needed, one thing she wanted, and then to spend a family day. And that was kind of one of the things we outlined within our fast was this was going to be something that happened during that. But we've been able to kind of talk with her and then see where she's like, I really don't need this. So instead, we're going to take some of the money we normally would have spent and do some like care packages for the homeless in our city. So it's just neat to get to bring them in on it. So I think that's been the thing that's been really neat for me.
So Sarah, what would you say to that? Kind of wrap us up here. Why should someone be part of the challenge?
Well, the roots under different people's spending are different. So the point of the challenge is to create a challenge for you that's unique to your spending habits. What habits are, thoughtless or out of control in your spending story, and then find out what's underneath them. So it's different from person to person. So I think that's incredible with Whitney, the conversations that are happening in your house. And for the listener, whatever your spending story is, there's history behind your spending habits. And you can figure out what that is, and you can figure out what's under them. And when you do, it can lead to so much freedom. And when you hear us talking about, what's motivating our spending fast, different seasons in life change your spending habits. So Stressful seasons are going to change your spending habits. We've all just been through a stressful season. So what has that done to us? What has that done to our spending? And when we can figure out what's under it, it just creates so much freedom, financial freedom moving forward.
That's so good. So I encourage everybody, check out the 30-day spending challenge. Sarah's spending challenge is going to help you revolutionize not only your finances, it's going to help you revolutionize your heart. And you're going to be able to embark on some conversations within your family, within your friend circle, within your coworkers, unlike anything you've had before. Who knows? You may choose to double up and go for 60 days or go for a whole year. And we're excited for the journey that we're all going to take, including yours truly. So pray for me, your humble Monday Money Tip podcast host. And so, hey, thank you so much, Sarah and Whitney, for sharing your stories and being a part of this episode today. We're fired up. I'll finish it up by saying, if you like today's episode, please help us get this podcast to other people who could benefit. You can do this by quickly rating our podcast, leaving a review. If you're watching on YouTube, you can click the subscribe button. If you hit the bell, it'll notify you every time a new episode is released. Next week, we're going to have a success story episode. That's right. A member of our team paid off their house and they are debt free. That's right. David, who's on our team, and his wife, Amanda, are going to be joining us and being able to share all the lessons they learned as they embarked upon focusing on paying off their house. Many of you know David. He's usually had a big, giant red lumberjack beard, and you've seen him if you've met us on the road. And, we've drove for the last 4 or 5 years talking about his aggressive approach to paying off that home mortgage. And we've been talking that towards the end of 2020, he was going to probably pay that off, or maybe early 2021. And they have done it. And so we're going to be sharing their story. I promise you, it will excite you and motivate you. Hey, look, that could be one more reason for you to be a part of the 30-day spending challenge. So as we close out this Monday, we always encourage you to take one positive step forward. Today, I want that to be for you to go to the website for the 30-day spending challenge. We included a link in the show notes, and check it out and take that journey with us. I promise you, Sarah will guide you towards something that could revolutionize your life. So until then, we'll see you next Monday. Get fired up.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the Monday Money Tip Podcast, presented by I Was Broke, Now I'm Not. If you enjoyed today's episode, please leave a review and subscribe. And for more great content and to stay up to date, visit iwbnin.com. We'll catch you next time.